And welcome to the Factor Uncensored. Tonight, the deadly mid-air plane crash on the Potomac in Washington, D.C. It happened last night after an Army Black Hawk and an American Airlines plane collided in the D.C. area. Tonight, 67 people are dead. We also have new details on the final seconds before the collision. The soldiers on board the Black Hawk were part of an experienced crew, according to a senior Army official. They were wearing night vision goggles. Right before the crash, the pilot told air traffic control he saw the passenger plane and he requested visual separation trying to get out of the flight's path. Two calls from air traffic control then went unanswered before the two aircrafts collided. Joining us to talk about it here on The Factor Uncensored tonight, we have activist Eugene Howard, business owner Marcus Davis, attorney Eric Dick, and attorney and former commercial airline pilot Oliver Brown. So, Oliver, let's begin with you. When you and I were texting all night last night when this happened, your assessment of what happened last night?
Well, I think it culminated. Last night was a culmination of all the mid-air collision misses that we've had over the last year and a half, whether it was FedEx getting ready to land on top of Southwest, Delta almost having a runway incursion with another one of their aircraft out of JFK, another one out of Chicago. That's where it culminated. When I first saw it happen and heard that the Black Hawk ran into the side of American, I knew that this was going to happen. I don't believe it's anyone's necessary fault. It's just because the system is so stressed right now, and we have not done anything to upgrade our airways and our ATC system, which basically we're still on two-way handheld radios, essentially telling each other where to go and where to be. And so when the Black Hawk pilot made his announcement, he said he had that aircraft in sight, and in fact he didn't. He had something else in sight, and he ran within seconds ran into the side of American, and there was nothing that they could do about it. But
when we talk about Washington, D.C., specifically Reagan Airport, we've heard people say there's a lot of congestion there. There's a lot of air traffic there. And it's a mix of military along with commercial.
So it is congested, but it's also amplified by the fact of all the restricted airspace. You can't fly over the monument. You can't fly over the White House. You can't fly over the Pentagon. When you come in and do a landing, you're following a river to get to the darn airports. You know, I remember the first time I flew that approach in there at nighttime, and they were like, "Oh, follow the river." You can't even see where the river's at. It's a bunch of lights, and you kind of see a little dark path at 2,000 feet. That's what you're kind of following. And when you first do it, you don't know where you're going. And they're telling you to follow other aircraft. And you got all these twinkling lights, and you can't distinguish an airplane from some tower that has a flashing light on it.
So if you had to place blame, it would be the system and not one particular pilot from American or the Black Hawk being military.
I'm not putting it on ATC, I'm not putting it on the military, and I'm not putting it on American. All of them are highly qualified, trained pilots and ATC. If you're working at ATC there, I guarantee you they have a minimum of 15 to 20 years experience before they put them in that type of airspace.
Now, what we heard, Oliver, is that the ATC, the air traffic controller who was working that night, was working both commercial as well as military.
Well,
and that's what we're hearing. That's not a full investigation.
Yeah, they're supposed to normally doing their approach, and then there's someone worried about the corridor. As the hours go on, it was 8:30 at night, less flights. One controller can handle both areas, right? But in an ideal situation, you would always have a controller on each areas. They do compress stuff, compress airspace in order to, utilize resources in their more dominant times. So that's not surprising.
All right. And really quick, what we heard from President Trump today as he addressed this tragedy here on American soil was prayers and condolences to the family. But we also heard this. So let's take a look at this soundbite.
It says diversity is integral to achieving FAA's mission of ensuring safe and efficient travel? I don't think so. We have to have our smartest people. It doesn't matter what they look like, how they speak, who they are. It matters intellect, talent.
So what we're hearing from the president is potentially, according to him, he says, that it could be diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, that causes Eugene.
Man, a racist will never let a good tragedy go to waste without being racist. I mean, to sit here while the bodies are still being pulled out of the water, to make the accusation that it's diversity, equity, and inclusion that caused this plane crash is egregious, is appalling, but this is what America is right now. This is Trump's America. You can't run it like a CEO business. He wants to deflect off of the fact that he fired and got rid of a lot of FFA workers. He's threatened the federal workforce. He's brought the morale down, and then you can see the real life consequences that these decisions make. And stop being racist, President Trump. Can you please have some compassion and empathy like the bishop asked?
All right, really quick, 30 seconds, Eric, your thoughts on this, and we'll come back to it, but at least begin here. We want to hear your thoughts as a conservative.
Well, I think President Trump is frustrated. He's brokenhearted that we lost 67 people, and his heart goes out to their families. But he's also frustrated with how the term diversity has changed. It's become overly broad. It's now focused on things like with your mental capacity is also incorporated in diversity. Whether someone has mental illness is part of diversity, and that's something that he's frustrated about. What he's looking for is the smartest and brightest, regardless of race. If you're the smartest person, you're the brightest person, it's gonna transcend race. That's what the position he's taking. Of course you want people of different races. Of course
you don't.
I respectfully disagree. But of course he does want people of different races, of different genders, there's a strength in that. But his frustration is how the term diversity and inclusion has been kind of perverted.
All right, we'll be right. And welcome back to The Factor Uncensored. We're back with our guests. We're talking about the crash on the Potomac River and President Trump's comments as it relates to DEI possibly being behind this. Marcus Davis, let's hear from you. Your thoughts about the president's comments?
None. My grandmother, as I'm sure other people had wise grandmothers, my grandmother said, when a fool talks, you ignore the fool. And so I would urge America to not pay attention to the fool and the foolishness that's coming out of the fool's mouth. When you go run in the house and say, Mama, he said this and he said that. Is it true? If it's not true, then just dismiss it. And America has to get to a point where we're ready, willing, and able to ignore the clown in the circus and stop buying the ticket to the circus to see the fool do the foolishness. With regard to the crash, my kids are in D.C. They're at Howard University. And I don't know how it would feel to get the news, when they fly in and out regularly, to get the news that their plane had taken a wrong turn. And I don't know how it would feel to see the leader of the nation politicize and trivialize a moment. My good friend Eric Dick, I understand what he's attempting to say, but you can't say that there's a frustration with the expansion of DEI, what diversity means, but then 60 seconds, 30 seconds, 15 seconds later, narrow in on race. America is America today because of the great work of African Americans that others could not do. The wealth of this nation was built on the genius of black folks knowing how to be great men that till the soil, knowing the science behind those tobacco crops, knowing the science behind the cotton, not the picking of it, but the science behind it. Some people breathe today. Their heart beats today as a result of African Americans knowing which surgery, how to perform the surgery. America needs diversity because that white plane beep, bleep, 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 bleep.
But one
All
thing,
right, Oliver, go ahead.
one thing people should know about this accident is Captain Campos, although he's not African American, he did used to volunteer at the Organization of Black Airline Pilots ACE Academy that brought young African American kids along to teach them and give them their first introductory flight.
And really quick, Captain Campos.
He's the captain that got hit by the actual.
Okay, got hit. Okay,
yeah.
got it. Yeah.
So I found that out today. I knew there was someone involved in Organization of Black Airline Pilots within the first 2 hours it happened. We thought it may have been an African American. Turns out it was Mr. Campos. I don't know what his nationality or ethnic
But do
background is.
you
But
Oliver,
he gave back to the community to help out.
as a commercial pilot, do you think this has been politicized?
Yeah, absolutely. But needlessly. There's nobody, anyone that's operating in that area has earned their place to be there. Whether it's the pilots, the damn flight attendants, the air traffic controllers, or the military pilots that made a mistake. They all earn their position. You don't get to that level just based off of, we had to check a box based off of your race, or as Trump is now saying, mental disability.
All right,
You can't
Eric, let's
fly
hear
with a
from you
mental
and your
disability.
thoughts about what Marcus said.
Well, I think diversity has changed over time, and I think this president is, if you look at him, he's one of the more diverse Republican presidents there. His wife is a non-American. When I say that, she's not a natural-born American, and it's very rare that you have that. The second woman is the first Indian second woman that I know that we've had. There is legitimate, if you could say legitimately, Trump's inner circle is more diverse than we've had. So I think that there is, whenever you're picking the smartest, when you're picking the brightest, then that's going to transcend race. It's going to transcend those things.
All right, we'll be
says
right
it?
back,
Who
guys.
says it?
Keep it
Oh,
here.
man.
We'll continue this conversation after the break because Eugene can't keep his damn mouth. We'll be back with you. We're back with our guests. We're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion as it relates to the crash on the Potomac River near Washington, D.C. with our guest, Eugene. We haven't heard from you. Your thoughts?
So look, my colleague, my friend here, Eric, said that diversity has so much changed. How has it changed? The only thing that has changed that there are opportunities that have opened up for black and brown communities that have been systemically locked out. What the white community must understand is DEI is not pushing someone forward that's unqualified. The first criteria is meeting the qualifications. Now, I know the Saltine community wants to use DEI as the new N-word or the new encompassing of everything that you don't like. But at the end of the day, we are all Americans, and I would hope that we're ready to start moving forward. And like my good friend at the end said, go get some chicken and waffles too. But like my good friend at the end said, it's time to move forward, and America must atone.
All right, we don't condone the saltine comment. However, when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, guys, the number one benefactor is not black or brown people, it's white women.
Right.
And so many people don't realize that.
Yeah, but historically in America, white women will sacrifice themselves, or white men will sacrifice white women for white privilege. That has happened historically. You saw it in the last election. You've seen it over time, where when you saw it in the suffrage movement, when it comes down to that, it's like, hey, I'm white first and woman
But
second.
why do you think people automatically attribute and attribute and relate diversity, equity, and inclusion and affirmative action to black people when it's not we're not actually the number one benefactors of it?
I'll tell you, there's a book called How to Kill 11 Million People, and one of the rules is you tell the lie, you tell it often, and you tell it loud. The people that have the megaphone, they shout. This is the same reason that criminality on black men is what it is when it's actually not a truth. It's the same reason that welfare is attributed to black people when it's actually not a truth. It's the same reason that people bring up black on black crime when white on white crime is just as prevalent. So he who has the microphone controls the volume, and so when the volume hits, it's not much you can do.
All right, so what?
So I want to put something there. Before all this DEI got going or whatever that was made up in the last 6-7 years, it's important to understand the airlines were actively looking for African Americans and minorities, and there was no name to the program. They actually encouraged it. I got hired at the airlines, and it was because people wanted to see a little bit more change within the company itself. So the culture at airlines have always been that way. There was never a DEI program. That's actually been made up by other groups, and it has nothing to do with African Americans.
All right, Eric, close us out. When it comes to DEI, how do you convince the American public this is not about racism, or is that your job?
Look, Trump received more minority votes than any Republican has, and you also have in the Republican Party more minorities being elected. In Harris County and other counties and nationwide, you have you have a lot of black men that are Republicans. So it's not. It is. I would suggest to you that the Republican Party itself is changing, and you have more people of different backgrounds in the Republican Party.
That's only until white men feel threatened by the black people and the minorities that take over the Republican Party. 5 years from now, when the minorities take over the Republican Party, you're going to see a different show, hear a different song.
And just so, as you said, Eric, 19% of black men voted Republican for Trump, 55% Latino men voted for Trump.
That's right.
Just so.